to date. We played two really good teams that have been at different points in their seasons due to some COVID stuff, but two really good teams. And I hear all this about home road. The reality is everything game's pretty much neutral. I saw a stat. What was it? Last 25 Big Ten games, home teams are 10-25. So I really do think it comes down to execution, and it comes down to kind of what team is playing well on that given night, just the different environments. So I think the biggest thing is, Adam, in this particular case, is we've got great respect for Penn State. They're tough, old, talented, well coached. Jim's done a great job with them. So I think you're immediately turning towards getting ready for a really quality team. I believe they're an NCAA tournament team. We haven't talked much about the end of the week, but you had to pivot away from, having a couple days off. We've got some guys banged up. I'm not ready to say anything specifically in terms of what everything's going to look like tomorrow. But you were initially thinking, okay, let's give those guys some recovery time or some medical attention. But obviously, when the Big Ten asks us to change it, kind of in this day and age, you need to do it, and it'll be a great challenge against a really good Penn State team. It was kind of an immediate pivot certainly for coaches to get ready to prepare, and I'm sure the same thing for them.
You're halfway through the Big Ten, which is kind of crazy to think about. Why do you think you've been able to get to this point? I know a number of teams have had to pause. You haven't. Why do you think, as a group, you've been able to get to the midway point here as relatively unscathed as you have?
I do think we've got, the moment you kind of pat yourself on the back about being somewhat COVID free is when it comes and bites you, and so there is no way to mitigate every risk from COVID. There's just not. There's just not. But what we've asked our guys to do, they've been great at doing. They really have, and they've been great at doing. And I think that they've enjoyed the season. It helps, right? They have a lot of motivation because they've enjoyed the season. They've enjoyed playing. They've enjoyed some of the really quality wins we have. But on top of that, we do have a mature group. But it could get us at any time, Adam. We could get shut down tomorrow for 2 weeks. I hope we don't, but we could. That's just the reality of where we're at.
Okay, next up, Griffin Strom.
Hey, Coach. Ever since Musa had to miss the Nebraska game for you guys, we've seen kind of a dramatic increase in his minutes and kind of a dramatic increase, a decrease in Musa's minutes and an increase in Justin Arn's minutes in the lineup. And I'm just kind of wondering what you view as all the contributing factors to that specific adjustment in the lineup in the past however many games.
Well, they play a little bit different positions on the floor, and in terms of our offensive and defensive schemes. So it was a little bit with CJ going out, it opened up a more opportunity for Justin with how we were doing things with the complement of Justice and Dwayne. But Moose is a tremendous young man and a good player, really good player. And he's still coming back from kind of the rust of being off for an entire off season. Bottom line is you can't play everybody. The rotation gets trimmed. I wouldn't be doing my job if we were trying to play 12 guys and spread the minutes out. So you kind of got to commit to a group. That could change, but that's part of it. Really, we played Gene some of those minutes here, as well as Justin, and that just ultimately somebody's going to get squeezed out, and whoever does get squeezed out has to stay ready, and because anything can change at any moment.
Okay, next up, Patrick Murphy.
Chris, you talked about pivoting to Penn State. I'm curious, how much had you guys prepared for them before when the initial game got postponed, and how helpful is that to kind of return to when it has to be a quick turnaround, like you said?
Yeah, we prepared for them, but they're different. They're a little different now. Not entirely different, but they played more games. They played a string of games since then. And again, they played really well. They're on a 2-game winning streak, but they were also, it's not like before they had performed well. They won at Virginia Tech, who's at the top near the top of the ACC. I think they won by 20. So they're an NCAA tournament team. And I believe that. And so we had prepared for them, but we had to tweak some things just given the fact that they've had a few more games under their belt here in this stretch.
And just how'd CJ come out of Saturday and the hand, and how's he feeling heading into this one?
Good, good. I think it's always going to be a pain tolerance. Could there be a situation, Patrick, where, it's bothering him or he gets hit and he has to play less? That'll ultimately be his call. It's a pain tolerance thing for him from game to game. So I'll really need to take my cues from him on how he's feeling. I don't think the torn ligaments, I know they're not completely healed, but he was anxious to get back, as we knew he would be.
Okay, next up, Steve Hellwagon.
Hey, Coach. I'll ask about a couple of the guys that have been in and out. Ibrahima Diallo, just kind of where he might be. Is there a hope in the next couple of weeks to get him back? And Sotos as well. Is there any hope that he might get to play anytime soon?
Yeah. So Ibrahima is still out with an MCL, has not returned to practice. And Jimmy Sotos is still out with a shoulder injury and neither guy will play in these next 2 games. Or excuse me, this next game. Neither 2 guys will play in this next game is a better way of phrasing it. So
okay. The other question I have is just the maturity level of your team. When they show they're able to go on the road and beat teams like Illinois and Wisconsin, and, forget the names of the teams that you're playing, if it's Illinois, Wisconsin, Purdue, whoever it may be, does it make it hard for them to come back and have any kind of excuses when they don't play up to that level against maybe another team? And I'm not going to throw out a lesser opponent or anything like that, but you've seen them document and prove they can beat good teams and beat good teams on the road. Is there now a higher expectation level for your guys in these situations?
I think the real sign of maturity is how you can consistently perform. The reality is in particular the Wisconsin game, I felt like we matched up pretty favorably. They play completely different than Penn State, so it's a really different scheme offensively and defensively. And I think that's the challenge in this, Steve, is it's not always – some of it is the mindset of your group, but some of it is your ability as a team to compete against different styles and, different ways that team attack you and play you. And, obviously really elite teams, there aren't very many bad matchups for them because they're so good at competing against different styles. So I think there is a mindset to it. I don't want to minimize that in terms of coming back ready to go, but it's also the ability to compete against different styles of play. And in this league, I think it, like the Penn State, for example, they're the only one to go on the road, and it was a 2-point game against Michigan early in the year, and they played them as well as anybody. So I think it's, I just think as much as anything, you got to focus on how you're playing and how you're performing and be ready for every game to be a challenge that's probably going to go down to the last couple minutes. And the ones that aren't or that don't go down to the last couple minutes, in some ways are a surprise.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, Bill Landis.
Hey, Chris, you talk a lot about sort of day-to-day growth and taking it, one day at a time. I'm just curious, when you maybe evaluate where you like to see your team grow, where specifically on the defensive end would you like to see that go? Because, the discrepancy and efficiency nationally, it looks a little weird, but in the league, it looks better, and you actually lead the league in a few defensive category. So, like, do you feel you're a little better off than some of those national numbers might suggest, or just where would you like to see that go?
Transition defense, for sure. We have to improve there, Bill. Tomorrow, rebounding is going to be critical. They're the number one offensive rebounding team in the league. They get loose balls better than anybody in the league, better than anybody I've seen on film, for that matter. They're the best at getting 50-50 balls. But I think generally for our team, transition defense, we have struggled with that. And I do think we just have to get better. We have to coach it better. We have to get better. We've got new guys that some of our new guys are struggling with it, and some of our returning guys have had moments where they've not communicated as well as they need to. We just got to coach it better and play it better. And some of our coverages have to get better. We're not obviously, huge inside, so we can't rely on a 7-foot shot blocker, but we can get better at some of those areas. And while we may not have the potential to be a top 10 defense, like we've shown we have the ability to be offensively, we can get better.
Okay, next up, Brendan Gulick.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. How are you, Brendan?
Good, thanks. Hey, I want to ask you specifically about EJ Lidell, because he's been really steady, just mentally level-headed and steady this year. What makes him tick?
You'd have to ask him that, but I think he's a young man that's as many of you know, Bill and Adam, and so many of you who followed his high school career and went to see him play there in Illinois knows he's won everywhere he's went, and he's been a big part of that. So winning's really important to him. He's a unique matchup, and we knew that when we recruited him. He's a talented kid. He's also a great kid. Tremendous family. Really well coached in high school. Those things go a long way when you're well coached in high school, and he's got a beautiful family that doesn't make excuses for him. When he struggles, they push him. So I think it's all that have led to him. Listen, I thought he would take a jump forward, and he'll still have moments where he struggles, but I think in some ways his progression has been even greater. I think we knew he would progress, but he's taken a significant jump from his freshman to his sophomore year.
The other thing I want to ask you about was just the general, you mentioned the word maturity. I'm thinking about that realm of the team. You come off of a high of having won 3 straight, top 15 road games. And there's, you referenced this weekend how you want the guys to enjoy that because those are really meaningful wins. What's the mentality of this team like going against a group that hasn't achieved it the same way that Rutgers or Illinois or Wisconsin has? And how are they handling the challenge of playing against a team that hasn't had that level of success and staying locked in on it?
Well, we'll see. And it's our job as coaches to make sure they understand how good this Penn State team is. Listen, this team got us really good at their place just, a few months ago. And most of those guys returned. So I do think there's some familiarity with some of our guys that returned. But again, I think, I think we've got great respect for everybody we play. Certainly a team the caliber of Penn State, who was a tournament team last year, and I think very well could be a tournament team this year. So I think, the challenge is all the stuff that we talk about in terms of maturity and moving on. We discussed well before the season got started. The idea of today's athlete living on social media and good times are bad. It's a recipe for inconsistency. So I think the challenge is stay in the moment, stay committed to trying to get better for all of us. Don't get swayed by anything because in this league, It's just the reality. You're going to go through, teams are going to beat you when you're at your best. So try to be your best every night. And I think our guys hopefully have a healthy understanding of that.
Okay, next up, Megan Carroll. Oh, hand went down. We'll go to Colin Haas Hill then.
Hey, Chris. I know you've never played, Justin Arns and this much before, and some of it's out of necessity just because of some of the injuries. But I know it's also a choice to put him on the floor for, nearly 35 minutes against Purdue and whatnot. What have you seen from him in these moments, and how does he change you guys on both offense and defense?
Well, he creates great gravity for you offensively, opens the floor. People are naturally hugging him and drawn to him because of his ability to shoot it so consistently. And for the most part, he's taken good shots and been aggressive at the same time. Defensively, he continues to get a little bit better. He'll get really challenged tomorrow in a lot of ways because of the quality of their guards across the board. But I think he just he's earned this playing time, and he's been a big part of us winning 4 out of 5 in this league because of what he's brought and his commitment on the defensive end, or getting better on the defensive end. So I'm happy for him. I'm really glad for him, and hopefully he can continue to work and get better.
I know Seth's playing, he's playing a little bit without the brace right now. How are you sort of handling his minutes, and what do you need to see happen for him to expand beyond 15 or so a game?
The tough thing for him is he can't consistently practice right now, and neither can Kyle Young because of just dealing with injuries. So the tough thing has been trying to, as a coach, figure out what they can and can't do physically, in particular, Seth more than Kyle. But it's also, you're wondering that. So, there were days leading up to the Wisconsin game where he just couldn't practice. He didn't feel physically well enough to do it. We weren't sure he was going to play. And I think that'll continue to be the case until, he gets a full off season of complete kind of rehab.
Okay, next up, Justin Holbrook.
Hey, Coach. The last 2 years in January, you guys went 3-10. Obviously, this year 4-2 with the chance to go 6-2. What do you think is different about this year, specifically this month, that you guys have done well?
Yeah, Justin, I don't know that I've really given that a whole lot of thought. I think much has been made of that, but I also didn't make a whole lot of us. I think almost going undefeated our first year in January. I think some of it is how you're playing. Certainly some of it is the schedule. Some of it is the rhythm that you're in, or injury or two. I didn't feel like there was a trend anyway. Our best team here numbers wise was last year. Offense, defensive efficiency across the board. I was our best team here. Now our first team had a terrific Big Ten season, but the league wasn't near as good. So these last 2 years, as the league has gotten much deeper and better, we have taken some lumps, and we have to own that and try to figure out ways to be more consistently and eliminate some of those. But I wouldn't necessarily point to anything specific. Hopefully we can keep getting better. I think, what sometimes gets forgotten about is, in particular with last year's group, is the role that we got on after those struggles in January. And that was a great credit to that group heading into the NCAA tournament, the Big Ten tournament. But, it wasn't anything specific that I felt like was with a pattern. We certainly looked at it as a coaching staff and tried to examine it from every angle.
Okay, next up, Tony Gerdeman.
Hey, Chris, you've played a lot of guys and you've gotten contributions out of all of them. You're talking about shrinking the rotation. Is that something that happens organically to this point, or does that also involve maybe some difficult decisions on your part, some tough choices, and some tough talks with your players?
you'd love to play everybody, Tony, as much as you could play them. Tough conversations are part of this business. We've had every year I've been a head coach, I think, maybe not every year, but most years, I've had tough conversations in the off season with young men about them wanting to start. And, sometimes that's led to helping them find another place or them choosing another place. It's part of the business, part of the conversations we have to have. And you have some of those conversations about playing time in season. And then some of it is just guys have to understand, it's hard to play 11, 12 guys in a given night.
So then how often does that get settled in the course of the season where it's obviously these 7?
Well, I don't know that we've stuck to quite 7, but I think it's been more like 9 or 10 for the most part. But it's a feel in a lot of ways, and guys have to stay ready if maybe they're outside the rotation because injuries and COVID can happen for anybody. So they got to stay ready.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go back to Adam Jardy.
Earlier, you were talking about needing to compete against teams with different styles and how one team's going to test you in a different way than the next team. Where do you think this team's level is as far as being able to constantly adapt? Because it does seem like you have a lot of pieces. You can be fairly versatile. Just where do you think this team is as far as being able to, from game to game, have to adjust to? We're going to have a game where we're going to shoot 35 threes, and then we're going to have a game where we're going to take the most 2s we've taken in a long time.
Yeah,
you seem like you can do a few different things that way.
I think, I'm interested to continue to learn that about our group. Penn State, for example, leads the league in steals. They lead the league in offensive rebounds. So they attack you different ways, defensively and offensively. They've got a really good shooting team, really good offensive team. And then they're disruptive defensively. That's completely different in terms of their disruption than, say, a Wisconsin who we just played, who we had to really, really execute well for 40 minutes to beat that team. You have to execute really well against Penn State's defense. It's just different. It's different the way they play. They've got just tremendous ability to kind of make plays on the ball and be disruptive. So I'm anxious to honestly continue to learn that about our group and can we adapt to different styles.
And it says that you're Holtmann.7. Do you know the other 6?
No, I don't. I didn't know that. That's what that meant. So maybe I should have known that.
Okay, we'll return to Megan Carroll.
Hey, Coach. I just was wondering, especially going off of the women's big win last night, how that means for this team and for both of you guys being in the top 20, how that feels for the team and what it means to them.
Great win for our women. They've had a really good conference season. They had some interruptions, but texted with Kevin. It's a great win for our women. Was really happy for them, and obviously coming off some other really good wins, Big Ten wins. So really happy for them.
Okay, that seems to be it for everybody. Appreciate you. Thanks, Coach.
Did you have one, Steven?
Yeah, sorry, I got put my hand up a little late. I don't think Dan saw it. I just wanted to touch back on Seth for a little bit. Obviously, when he got here, the first thing people think about is what he was pre-injuries, what he was in high school, and then Ivy League Player of the Year, all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. And I know it's been a process for him to just get to the point where he can actually play basketball. And you're saying, he still there's times he can't necessarily go through all practice and he might need a full off season. As a coach, watching a player go through that, knowing what he can be, even if he's 85% healthy, how have you seen him, now that you're seeing it up close and personal, how do you see him handle that on a day-to-day basis when we all know and he knows what he can be if he ever gets anywhere near that level of health again?
I think, we've all had to probably adjust, how quickly our expectations for what Seth was, what we all anticipated. Having said that, I think he's been tremendous for us. Tremendous. I just think we've had to adjust our timeline a little bit. And so is he. So is he. He's had to adjust it too. It's a significant injury. It doesn't mean he can't get back to being a really effective player. He's already proven that he can be a really effective player. We don't win several of these most recent games without Seth Towns. But I think the timeline in him had to be adjusted, and it had to be adjusted for us. he needs a full off season. He needs to be able to go through that. And I'm excited about what next year's going to be for him. Having said that, I still think I'm excited about his continual growth this year. You know, he's going to help us in a lot of games this year, a lot of games. And the whole deal with missing some practice, that's been a struggle for him. And it's been a struggle for me as a coach to figure out how to manage all that. But he's been tremendous for us.
I don't want to compare him to Kevin Durant, but the idea of he's a guy who's skill based and not necessarily a guy who just kind of jumps out the gym all the time, does it kind of leave for some optimism to know that, you know, this is, you know, he's more of a finesse player than he is a athlete, for lack of a better way of putting it.
He's what he has is great touch at 6'8", Stephen, great touch at 6'8", and can be a mismatch issue. The biggest thing for him has been the other end and figuring that out while being pulled away from practice because of injuries or because of continual rehab. That's been the biggest challenge for him. And the athleticism that he's seen at this level, but he's got phenomenal touch. And you see it in some of his mid-range shots that are hard shots to shoot, but he's got to continue to grow on the defensive end and dealing with the